Last storyteller of the day. You guys gotta go crazy. You guys gotta go nuts and wild, Moth crazy for Nate.
My senior year in college, one of my former roommates came over to my house one afternoon and we went across the street to an estate sale because the old man was going to a nursing home and his wife had passed away and his kids were selling all of this stuff. And so my friend Adam and I went over there and we perused through all the knickknacks before we came across this large record player console. And on one side of the record player console was a record player, and on the other side was a large storage area for records. So Adam really liked this piece, and it cost $10, except he only had 7, so I gave him 3 of my dollars to buy this record player console, and we loaded it up into the back seat of his car, and he drove off. Later that night, he gave me a call and said, "Nate, I've found something in the record player console when I got home. And I can't tell you what I found in there because tomorrow morning I'm going to go and speak to a lawyer. However, if you'd like to meet for dinner tomorrow night, we can definitely do that." So I hung up the phone and immediately my mind was going in all kinds of different directions of what he found in this record player console. Did he find a really rare record? Did he find a treasure map in there? Did he find some type of human remains in this record player console? So one thing you got to know about Adam is that he is one of the most generous people that I know. If I ever needed a ride to campus or elsewhere, he would always offer. If I had neglected to do my laundry for a couple weeks, I could always go into his closet and grab a shirt without even asking. Yeah. So the next night we sat down for dinner and I skipped the small talk and I said, "Adam, you gotta tell me what's going on." And he said when he got home, he put the record player console in his garage and he opened up the storage area and he reached his hand back in there and he found a metal box. And he opened up the metal box and inside was a diamond ring and over $13,000 in cold cash. So he starts flipping through the bills and he realizes that all these bills are dated from the 1930s and the 1940s. And some of the bills had Hawaii marked on them, just in case the Japanese ever overtook the Hawaiian Islands. The U.S. government could void that currency so Japan couldn't use that money against us. So now Adam realizes that all this money he has are antiques and worth potentially much more than the $13,000 of face value. So at this point in the story, he gets up and goes to the bathroom, and I remember for the first time that I gave him 3 and I realize now that 30% of this booty is mine. So when Adam returns to the table and sits down, even before I had the chance to bring up my 30%, he tells me that he's thinking about giving the money back. He says that the old man probably forgot that the money was in there, and that the kids probably didn't even know about the money, and that the diamond ring was probably an heirloom for the family. And he said he was also thinking about maybe keeping the money because he was short on tuition that month and his transmission on his car had just gone out, and he thought maybe God was trying to bless him with this money. And I couldn't argue with that because he was such a generous guy. Maybe God was trying to reward him for his generosity. So the next day I sat down with the father of a friend of mine who was a judge, and I told him the whole story. And he said, "Actually, Nate, you're not entitled to any of that money because the agreement was that Adam was going to pay me back the $3 the next time I saw him, regardless of how much this record player console was worth." So for the next week, Adam deliberated back and forth about what he was going to do. He talked to his pastor, he talked to his parents, he talked to God, and he couldn't decide what he was going to do. But there was a small card in this metal box that made reference to a church downtown, and this note was from the 1940s. And he thought it was going to be fate for him to go down and talk to the priest at this church, and whatever the priest said, that's is what he was going to do. So he drove down there, but the priest wasn't there. The secretary was, and he told the whole story to the secretary. And the secretary said, you know what, I'm not clergy, but I think God is telling me to tell you that you should keep the money. So that's all Adam had to hear. He got in his car, he called me on his cell phone right away, and he said, I'm keeping the money. I said, fantastic. And a couple years later, I ran into Adam. I said, hey, whatever happened to that money? What'd you do with it? And he said, you know what? I gave some of that money to my parents. I gave some to my church. And I'm keeping all of the specialty bills with Hawaii on them and the diamond ring for my kids someday. Yeah. So even though a treasure had landed in Adam's lap, he decided still to give it all away. Thank you.